Okay. So can we start at the federal level, the executive branch of the federal government? Who are the candidates and generally what do they do?
Okay, so at the federal level, there's the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States. And so that's your executive branch. And they generally implement the law and enforce the law. They manage international relations at the federal level, including through the State Department and various ambassadors. They have what you call like an administration. So you talk about the administrative branch. You'll talk about the Biden administration. So they administer the laws. And also in the case of the President of the United States, he or she serves as commander in chief. You also at the federal level have the people who make the laws that the executive branch implements, and that is Congress.
And
so
that's the legislative branch. So that is the legislative branch of the federal government. Okay, gotcha.
Exactly. And there's a third branch, the judicial branch, but they won't be on your ballot.
Yes.
They are appointed by the administrative branch and confirmed by the legislative branch. So that we don't participate in on voting.
So should we dig into the legislative branch a little bit? There's the House of Representatives, there's the Senate, they're different. Can you help us understand what each of those bodies, chambers, do?
Sure. Well, to start with, let's think about how they get there and how many of them there are. So the Senate's a little easier to understand. There are 50 states in the United States, and each state gets 2. So there's 100 United States senators. In the other branch, in the other house, so to speak, it's the House of Representatives, and there are 435 of them, so quite a few more. But the number that each state sends depends on that state's population. So California has a large delegation. Rhode Island has a very small delegation. So what happens is for a bill to become law, it can be introduced in either house, and then typically it starts in a committee and goes through a process. If it gets to the floor of the whole United States Senate or the whole House, there's a vote. If it passes, it goes to the other house and goes through the same process. There's a little more back and forth sometimes than that, but when both houses pass the same bill, then it goes to the president's desk for signature or a veto.
Interesting. So on the Senate, since there are 2 senators per state, it seems like there are states that are more populous. And for example, California has, I think the GDP of California is 9th in the world or something. And then you have a smaller state. Am I wrong about that?
It's actually, California has the 5th largest economy in the world. And recently I've heard some people even say 4th. So it's like a nation state.
Right. So there's a lot of our economy wrapped up in California, the US economy wrapped up in California. Is it true that senators in a smaller state that doesn't have as big of a contribution to the population or economy could stop policies that might benefit the economy more broadly or might be contrary to what California might want?
Yeah, well, a single senator can't do it on his or her own, but a group of senators that might represent far fewer people when you add up the populations of their states could get enough votes to block legislation in the Senate, even though the senators who are supporting the legislation represent a lot more people. So you and I, Michelle, living in California, are a lot less represented in the United States Senate than people living in Oklahoma or Delaware, for example.
Wow. But not on the House of Representatives side, because that's determined by the population. And My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that is based on the census. Everybody's heard of the census happens once every 10 years, and that's how they determine what the population is of the state to determine how many representatives each state gets. Is that right?
Yes, in fact, the House of Representatives is often called the People's House for that reason. So yes, every 10 years, we count how many people live in each state, and the number of representatives assigned to that state is adjusted to reflect the relative populations of the states. And so then that number will go to Congress. And in fact, because the number shifts, the lines of each defining each district often shift too. And so there's a redistricting process that happens every 10 years, and different states handle that differently as well.